Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 177. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
It's an honor to be here with all three of you guys tonight.
And for one of the last times, at the end of February, we're going to be saying goodbye to Jordan, unfortunately, but glad to have him once again.
Jerrad, I can't tell you how glad I am to have you on this show. Now, Dom, that's a completely different story. But you, Jerrad, are a special guest like our other special guest named...
Andrew Taylor. Welcome, Andrew Taylor. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
On the internet, if you've heard of him before, he's been on the podcast. He does a panel-to-panel podcast, which talks about comic books. He does the Apex Legends podcast with some of the OK Beast guys, which I'm forgetting the name of. What is it called?
Jump Master.
Jump Master, there you go.
Yeah.
Raccoon City Radio, right?
Yeah.
With Alex.
Alex O'Neill, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, we talked about how great of a name that was. I remember that.
Yeah. And it's coming back.
There we
with
go.
the release of the Resident Evil 3 remake, right?
Yep.
Thank you for joining
Alex,
us again.
You can ask these guys. When I say something has a good name, I fucking mean that shit.
Really good.
Because if it doesn't have a good name, I will tear it to shreds.
Oh, you should have heard his whole diatribe about, the game Celeste. The game studio that made that game, their development studio is called Matt Makes Games.
Yeah.
And Jordan went in for about 15 minutes about how that's like the worst development studio name he's ever heard. And yeah, so if he gives you a compliment,
game,
he
though.
doesn't just hand those out. Yeah.
That is a great game.
First time you're joining us since we were talking about this before we started recording E3, I think.
Yeah.
I've kind of made it a point this year. I want to have guests on a little bit more frequently, maybe every couple of weeks. If you had heard in the intro, Jordan's going to be leaving us at episode 180. Sadly, after 180 episodes, almost 4 years. It'll be like a week before we hit our 4-year anniversary. But, it is what it is. Anyways, now with that somber note out of the way, I was about to cry. Let's hop into the gaming news you guys care about. First up, this was kind of a big bombshell. Rod Fergusson, studio head at the Coalition, will be leaving the studio in March to join Blizzard and lead the Diablo franchise. And if you didn't know, Rod Fergusson didn't just, jump on when the Coalition took over for Gears of War. He's been there since the beginning, since Gears 1 with, Cliffy B and the gang. This is an interesting departure because I do think it's a positive for Microsoft in a way, and it's a negative for Rod Fergusson in a way. And the reason I say that is the biggest complaint with Gears of War, despite Gears 5 feeling different than the previous iterations in the franchise, is it still feels like it's in a place where it needs to not necessarily reinvent itself, but it needs to sell itself like a new product again because it has become stale to the mass market, right? People just don't... If you're out on Gears of War, you're out, and it's hard to sell people again. It doesn't necessarily need like a God of War moment. I don't think it needs to be that drastic. But I do think that, Rod Fergusson leaving, them getting maybe a new head of the Coalition can steer Gears in a interesting and more refreshing direction. And with him leaving to Blizzard... if you've read any news about Blizzard in the last year and a half, they haven't really been in the best of places. And I do think he's talented enough, especially now that he's going to be leading the Diablo franchise, that he's very charismatic and he seems like he wants to do good by the fans. I just don't know if Blizzard is in a place where they will give him enough leeway to do that, But yeah, what do you guys think about him leaving?
Blizzard is obviously in a very weird spot right now, so oddly enough, this is probably the most positive bit of PR that Blizzard's had in a good long while. So, and it's not even really the Diablo franchise that they had so much controversy over, but it's certainly had its share. And
you own a mobile phone, right? That comment was like ridiculous. Sorry.
Right? Yeah, they knew that people were anticipating the reveal of Diablo 4 at BlizzCon 2018. And
it was the year before last year.
Yeah, they basically just came out and acted like the fuck is your deal? It's a mobile game. You have a phone. Everybody has phones, right? And it's like, yeah, but that's not what we were fucking here for, asshole. So, they did that whole thing and pissed everybody off. And then when they did they reveal Diablo 4, like trailer and everything, or did they just give info?
They revealed the cinematic trailer, which is like super dope. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks sweet.
Which, of course, those are always dope from Blizzard, but...
That was 2019, though. That was last year. Like,
yeah.
Right.
The trailer, yeah.
So this most recent BlizzCon is when they did that, and I wouldn't say that people were ultra hyped on what they saw there. You know, obviously I'm not a Diablo fan, but from the outside looking in, it did not seem like people were utterly blown away once they finally did reveal Diablo. And this is to say nothing of the Hearthstone Hong Kong issue that they had and all of that. So yeah, I think Blizzard could use this positivity that hopefully Rod Fergusson is going to bring.
With the Gears of War, Andrew, do you think that a change in leadership at the head of a coalition is something that franchise needs?
I'd say probably. I mean, like you were saying, you don't want it to be as drastic as, say, like God of War, kind of like basically a soft reboot, but still a continuation. But I think that Blizzard has had some issues, like we've talked about, that they need to address, and maybe having Rod come in and kind of, you know, he's obviously committed, seeing that he's been with the Coalition and then, you know, Cliffy B and like the origins of like Gears of War franchise, and so seeing him come in and take over Diablo, or, you know, like the overall like direction of Diablo, I think is interesting to me, because I mean, it's always cool to see someone go from one huge franchise to another. And honestly, I kind of disagree with Jordan when it comes to people being excited about Diablo. Like, I'm not a huge Diablo fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt like fans were really excited with not only the cinematic trailer, but there was also like a very small gameplay trailer that they showed, and it looks like Diablo, but it looks pretty, it's way more, you know, next gen looking, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited to check it out.
They made up for that 2018 debacle.
Yeah.
This past year.
Well, I mean, yes and
Maybe
no.
not entirely, but
yeah, it's just, it's a lot of it.
I
is
think
like
that was my point. Is they didn't necessarily nail that part.
Oh,
which is like
yeah.
they had a lot. Well, I didn't say that right, but
yeah,
they had a lot to overcome.
I mean,
they didn't necessarily overcome what they had, the hole that they had dug for themselves. I feel like.
The guy comes out on stage, he's like, "Yeah, we messed up," and that's all he says. Like, it wasn't even like an apology, really. It was just more so like, "Yeah, we know we did something stupid," or whatever. That's not an apology.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
Yeah, I mean, having someone like Rod come in, like I said before, it seems like he's committed, you know, especially to one franchise. So why not, you know, sometimes it's good to dip your toes into something new. So having him check out Diablo, I think, is cool. Like I said, not the biggest Diablo fan, so I don't really know what could change from previous iterations of the game, but you know, I grew up with Gears. I'm sure you guys grew up with Gears, and seeing someone like him, you know, switch gears, pun.
Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah, seeing him, you know, take over something new, I think is exciting to me. So, yeah, best of luck to him. Best of luck to Blizzard. Maybe he's what they need to have for any other PR debacles. I don't know, but
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
knows? It
Well-
could be a really good change, or it could not work at all. Who knows?
To that point, I want to ask you this question, Dom. He recently, you know, with Gears, they did the spin-off titles. They did Gears Pop, which obviously the hardcore fans weren't too excited about. But then they also
What
revealed
happened?
Gears Tactics, right? Which is a strategy game in the vein of, God, the
XCOM.
name's escaping me. XCOM. Thank
Halo
you.
Wars. Oh,
Yeah, and also Halo Wars, right? A little different. XCOM's a little different than Halo Wars. Still a strategy game, but the overall,
Yeah.
you know, base gameplay. Do you think, Dom, the part of this of him leading the Diablo franchise now is that they saw his experience with having non-mainline games, in production that excited fans? You think part of it is him coming over to make Diablo more than just Diablo 4, right? Have these spin-off titles and take advantage of a franchise for Blizzard that is in a good place, whereas some of their other stuff isn't. Like, the recent release of Warcraft 3 Reforged didn't necessarily go over really well, and in general, Warcraft is in a weird place. Do you think that's maybe why they brought him over, because of his experience with, stretching out a franchise and getting the most out of it?
Yeah, that makes sense, because, Diablo 4, what they showed it, but, what is that? Probably another year or two before before that game releases, right?
2021, right?
Yeah, it'll be a next-gen game for sure.
Yeah.
So, and then that'll be the only Diablo game, mainline Diablo game for another decade, just like 3 lasted a long time, right? So
yeah.
So yeah, there'll probably be whatever they do for Diablo. I've never played any of those games, but probably a lot of expansions there. But then also, I think you're right. You start seeing more spin-off type stuff. Maybe another Switch port. I don't know, but I get what you're saying, and he's probably gonna. They got plans for him, or he has plans for them, probably. So.
Yeah, too, we talked about his loyalty. It had to be a really good opportunity, a really lucrative opportunity for him to bounce, right, and leave. So, who knows? Maybe he was just a huge fan of Diablo his entire life, and the chance to lead that franchise was enough of an opportunity, right, for him to want to leave. So, we'll see what happens there with Rod Fergusson as he joins Blizzard. Next up, we had another departure. Somebody who isn't necessarily as beloved as Rod Fergusson or as public-facing. One of the Hauser brothers left Rockstar Studios. If you're not familiar, the Hauser brothers were the co-founders of Rockstar Games, and Dan Hauser left. And the only reason this was mentioned was in the Take-Two earnings calls and stakeholder things, which we'll get to later, because he's not the type of person who wants to talk to the media. He very rarely even did interviews, right? They're very private, the Hauser brothers. He left. His last day will be March 11th, officially. And some questions have been coming up about why exactly he left. He had been on sabbatical since March of last year, and I guess he finally decided to leave. And some people point to the toxic workplace culture has been overturned in these last 8 to 12 months of it becoming less toxic. And Take-Two has pushed Rockstar to quicken their development cycles, because though they're making hand over fist money with Grand Theft Auto Online, they want more than just one game from Rockstar every generation, right? We only got Red Dead Redemption 2 technically for this gen. Grand Theft Auto 5 was a port. So it's interesting. He's a very private person. He was the lead writer for Red Dead Redemption 2 and a number of the other Rockstar games that people like. His brother is staying on at the company. They reconfirmed that. I wouldn't say that he's leaving because it's getting better. That's an odd way of we're getting rid of the toxic workplace environment. I'm going to leave now. The part of them pushing the development time to be a lot quicker, I think that could be an issue for him wanting to leave, because they were already getting strained with, working 80 plus hours a week. He had mentioned in a quote that they spent over 100 hours a week writing the Red Dead Redemption 2 story.
Yeah, that was a weird quote too, because it almost seemed like he was kind of bragging about it.
Yeah,
which is kind of weird, but I don't know. I understand a deadline. I understand crunch, and I've been in a similar situation. I understand how that all works, but the video game industry needs to change. It all needs to change. It's not just Rockstar. It's not just Take-Two. You have all these developers and these people that have personal lives that these companies, I don't want to say they don't care about, but there's just some sort of solution that needs to be made where it's okay, yeah, we get it. We have to have a deadline. We've given our fans or the public or whoever, this expectation. But to be honest with you, it's just kind of not changing. And like you said, Jerrad, it would be weird for Dan Hauser to be oh, the workplace is getting better. I'm just gonna leave because of that. So there's obviously other reasons for that, but I would be interested to find out why. Especially he's so private. Both of them are so private. So what's the point of leaving? It's not like he's in the media all the time. Like, you rarely see this guy.
Well, and
they're basically like Daft Punk. Like, you just never see their faces. So
exactly. But to your point about Crunch, he had a lot more pride in his Crunch, I would assume, because he was a co-founder of the studio, right? So he saw Crunch, I think, a lot differently than your average employee, because it was a company he helped found, and they're like one of the most successful, if not the most successful developer going right now, you know? So Crunch to him is seen in a different light than, you know, your average everyday Rockstar employee.
Yeah, there's something weird about, because it's happened to me too. I never worked a 100-hour week, but like when you work like 70, 80 hours a week or whatever, like even though you didn't really, if you didn't really want to do it, or you felt a little pressured or whatever it is, like you fucking like you brag about it after. It's weird. Like you want to like you want to talk about it because like you're like, damn it, I did that. I don't know. Not that makes it better. Yeah, like Andrew said, there's problems there, and it seems like it's getting better. Apparently at Rockstar, at least. But yeah, I get why he would brag about it. That's like a common thing that people tend to do. I forget. There's a phrase for it where like, the way people talk about working a lot like reinforces, and they kind of want to in a weird subconscious way, but they shouldn't.
The guy's probably a workaholic. And, like, I mean, it kind of shows. I mean, you've played Grand Theft Auto 5. You've played Red Dead Redemption 2. You've played all their other titles. You can tell the amount of work that's put into these games. But, like, once again, you have to think about the employees and the people who are working under you. Like, that's really what matters. And so, I mean, maybe he is leaving because whoever has stepped up and said, hey, we can't do this anymore. Maybe it's his brother who's like, no, we literally can't do this anymore. Because, like, then if the reports are coming out of Take-Two saying, hey, like, we're crunching like all the time, then it's just bad press, and so he probably doesn't want to be part of that. I don't know. I'm sure.
Or the tortured artist thing, right? Of he's like, no, we need to have this crunch in place to make the games we make, and without that, we won't be able to reach that level of greatness. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the weirdest thing though is like their development cycles for all these games is so long. It's almost like it's like 6, 7, 8 years sometimes, and I enjoy pretty much everything, you know, Rockstar's ever put out, but like it just baffles me like how long these games take. And I guess there's probably some sense of pride of like the depth and the realism that they put into the games, but it's like, man, I don't know. It's
and then it's the interesting thing too, right? Is if Take-Two didn't own them, would they even have crunch because they don't care about the timeline because they know that once their game comes out it will sell? But is it the Take-Two thing of the corporate structure of forcing in the deadline, right? Who knows? It's so weird.
It's weird.
Speaking of stakeholders and people who provide a lot of money to these game companies, there was a number of stakeholder call roundups. There was Ubisoft, there was Activision, there was Take-Two. We got a bevy of information. I'm gonna run down all of it real quick, and then you guys can decide which one you personally find is the most interesting to talk about. All right?
Sure.
So, with Ubisoft, we had the reaffirmation that they're going to release 5 AAA games between April of this year, 2020, and March of 2021. And they stated that 3 of these games will be Watch Dogs Legion, Rainbow Six Quarantine, and Gods and Monsters. Now, after this news broke, people were wondering what those other 2 games are, right? We knew 3 of the 5. Jason Schreier followed up in a tweet saying, hey, for all of those people wanting a Splinter Cell game, I hate to break it to you, but the other 2 games are AC and Far Cry, AC being Assassin's Creed. So, if you take Jason Schreier at his word, which we should, because he doesn't really talk about things unless they're confirmed by multiple sources for him, that means in the next year, well, until March 2021, we're going to be getting Watch Dogs Legion, Rainbow Six Quarantine, Gods and Monsters, Assassin's Creed, Ragnarok, or Vikings, or whatever that is, and a new Far Cry game. They also said that 3 of those games will come out between October and December, and the other 2 will come out between January and March. So we'll see what happens there. I think we're all in agreement that Assassin's Creed will be one of those 3 that comes out between October and December. And given Far Cry's track record, that'll probably come out between January and March because those games usually always come out in the first part of the year. Next up, Activision. There was a lot of Call of Duty
Real
stuff.
quick, Jerrad.
Yep.
18,732. That's the number of studios that Ubisoft has around the world. And you can't make a motherfucking Splinter Cell game? Get the fuck out of here with this shit. Get the fuck out of here, Yves Guillemot. I don't want your bullshit Just Dance numbers at the beginning of an E3 until you open with a badass Sam Lake intro. And he's got the fucking goggles on, right? That's all I want to see. No more of this Just Dance horseshit.
Sam Fisher.
18,000 studios you have.
Sam Fisher.
My God.
Sam Lake is the studio head of Remedy, I think.
Sam Lake, Sam Fisher, goddamn Isaac Asimov. I don't care who does it. Somebody make a fucking Splinter Cell game. They have too many studios.
I do think one is in development. I mean, I would hope.
I mean, I thought that 4 years ago, Jerrad. Like,
Valid
you're bringing Sam Fisher, right? You're bringing Sam Fisher into the DLC for Ghost Recon Wildlands? What?
A featured character in that weird
There's
mobile
no
game?
game within a year or two of that? What are you doing?
Well, they did it. They did it in he was in something else too. It's very weird the way they're handling that character and that IP in general. Next up, Activision. They had a ton
The
of.
biggest thing is the voice actor is getting too old. Like,
Oh, Michael
he needs
Ironside?
to play that role, yeah.
Yeah, I just hope it's not one of those things where he passes away before they decide to greenlight a project. That would suck. Activision. They had a bunch of Call of Duty stuff, which isn't super relevant to this podcast. And all of the numbers were just typical things you'd expect from Call of Duty. You know, selling a bunch, one's coming out this year, yada yada yada. But they did announce that several remasters and reimaginings of games are going to be revealed in 2020 in the coming months. So that's interesting. Because when you think about their catalog in general, it's like, what do they have to reimagine or remaster, you know, outside of the Call of Duties and such. But we'll see what happens. They've done some things with, you know, Crash and Spyro. Maybe they go back to those wells. Who knows?
Yeah, who has that answer to that question of what else do they have? Because, yeah, Crash and Spyro, they did well with remaking those games. But, like, what else do they own that they might be talking about? They remastered Call of Duty 4 already. What?
Well,
I mean, a remaster of COD MW2 would kill, too, for people. They'd eat that up.
Yeah, okay. That'd be good.
They remastered Ultimate Alliance, which I think was Activision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's tough because you only really know them as the Call of Duty publisher, right? But those remasters for both Spyro and Crash did really well and were really beloved. But yeah, it's tough to think of, like, well, what would they turn to?
Yeah,
you know, in terms
they must own a bunch of shit.
Off the top of my head, I don't.
Tony Hawk.
Yeah, but that relationship is dead, right? That bridge is burned. Because that partnership ended. The 5 was the last one on the contract, and that's why they rushed it out, and that's why it was like garbage.
They've got to have like the licensing rights for the earlier games.
Yeah, but I'm saying that they can't. I don't think they can develop a new one with his name on it.
I thought we were talking about remasters and remakes.
Oh yeah, true. Completely over my head. Yes, they could probably remaster like Thug or something. Or even one of the 20 Pro Skaters, yeah. Who knows?
Because even the HD remaster of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is just like a collection of levels from the first 3 or 4 games. And so if they actually went in and just did the individual games full on, that would be a lot better because there's features and all that weren't included. So it was an okay remaster and it looked good, but I would like to see a more comprehensive remastering or remaking of the original Tony Hawk games for sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see because instead of labeling it as a reboot, because I don't think they'd want to do that to the fans, they could label a new Spyro or Crash as a reimagining, you know? I think those could sell fairly well. I don't know if they'd want to label those as a reboot and freak out the fan base. I don't know.
Also, the thing that's probably going to kill my Tony Hawk hopes is probably not Tony Hawk himself, but moreover the licensed music from those original games.
Oh, God, yeah. Those are a nightmare for any of those types of games.
Yeah.
I'll just scrap it and just fill it up with Post Malone, right?
Jesus Christ.
Ooh.
He's pretty expensive. It'd probably be cheaper to get the licenses for the old soundtrack. Because he's like one of the most popular artists right now.
Bunch of like
He's
one-off
everywhere.
punk bands.
Lastly, the last stakeholder call was Take-Two. This is where we got the biggest chunk of interesting information. Red Dead Redemption 2 sold 20 million copies as of today. GTA 5 has hit 120 million, which is insane. The Outer Worlds, which you're wondering why would they be reporting on that. Remember, Private Division is the weird like indie publisher for Take-Two, which published The Outer Worlds. It hit 2 million copies. And yeah, so those are the sales numbers. According to that, GTA 5 sold 20 million in 2019, which was the second best year for it after the release year of the game, which is insane. GTA 5 Online, man, that thing just keeps sounding like hotcakes.
I just don't get it. Who doesn't have it yet? Who's still buying it?
You have to think about the people who like were playing it on 360 and PS3 that eventually got around to getting a console too, right? And then that was the reason for getting it is like, oh yeah, GTA Online on next gen consoles, which is like current gen, you know. But
What's
or
the
buying
attach rate?
second copies for like siblings. I don't know, man. Breaking their copy because they.
Yeah, there's got to be people like that's got to be a thing. Is people are encouraging their friends to buy it for sure.
Yeah, and you think about the number of people who buy games and then sell them back, right, to like GameStops and stuff. Imagine the number of people who bought GTA 5 early in the generation, sold it, and they're like, oh man, GTA 5 Online's popping right now, and their friends tell them, go buy it again, you know?
Yeah.
And we also have to remember that this is no longer a $60 game. This could be $10 on sale sometimes, you know, with like a, what do they call them, Shark Card or Shark Points with a
Yeah.
pack of Shark Cards. So
Yeah.
Yeah, this is different than the MPD, which reports revenue, right? This is copies sold. So to Jordan's point, if it's always on sale, you know, snag it up. Next up, some information about developers. They stated that we'll hear about Hangar 13, who are the developers of Mafia 3, and 2K Silicon Valley, who we talked about this probably at the end of last year. This is the studio that's now led by Michael Condrey, who was partly responsible for creating Dead Space, and then he moved over to work on Call of Duty. He left last
Shout
year
out.
to work at a new 2K studio. That's 2K Silicon Valley. They stated that those projects for those two dev teams will be revealed in the coming months. So we can assume either A, the console reveal events, or E3, right? Or a combination of both. Yeah,
Bioshock.
Hangar 13 is interesting because people feared that studio might have had the red skull above it of getting closed, right? After Mafia 3 reviewed like kind of mixed and didn't sell very well. People thought that they might get the axe, but unfortunately they survived. Or fortunately they survived. Do you think their next game will be Mafia, or you think because that game didn't sell very well, 2K is like just start a new IP, you know? What do you guys think is the most likely scenario for them?
I would love to see them do another Mafia game because that was one of those swimming in sevens where it was like, you know, it's got a lot of glitches. It has they dropped the ball in some places as far as game mechanics and player usability, but other than that, it seemed like there were some really solid parts of it. I know people love the story, so I would like to see them take another swing at Mafia because I know that is a game that a game series, a game title that franchise that people you know, connect to for whatever reason. A lot of people, even that aren't like big into video games. So I certainly think that we're going to see a Mafia 4 at some point, or a new Mafia game, and I would like to see them give it another try because the glitches and all that were unfortunately in the game, it seems like something that could be remedied, and it's not every day that you see a good story in a game. So it's like the fact that they got that and they had at least some decent combat. I'd love to see them have another try.
Yeah, I like that take. I could see Mafia 4 coming out and them having doubled down on it, right? And it's just way better. That would be sweet because it seems like while maybe it wasn't a critical darling, like a lot of people saw the potential in it, more so than your other swimming in 7 type games.
Yeah. Andrew, I have a question for you regarding the other studio, right? The 2K Silicon Valley, the one led by Michael Condrey, who was a co-creator of Dead Space. We're seeing a resurgence in survival horror right now. Obviously, we've talked about Resident Evil 2 remake and now 3 coming out. How would you feel if maybe he started a survival horror or horror adjacent franchise for Take-Two? Because that is something that's kind of missing from their catalog.
Yeah, I think that they I mean, from what I've understood and talking to people, a lot of people would buy like a Dead Space remastered like trilogy collection or something like that. So right there, right off the bat, they could make money off of that. That'd be cool to see them do another game, another Dead Space game, and just call it Dead Space again. And just
remember, this is Take-Two, not EA.
Oh, okay. Well,
competitors.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
just go full on horror with BioShock.
Yeah, just.
But I think we've already got one in development elsewhere.
Yeah, do some sort of like, I don't know, new horror IP or something like that. I don't really know, but yeah, I mean, that like horror games sell, especially if they're good. So why not?
Yeah. Speaking of, you guys mentioned BioShock. That's the last thing on here. Cloud Chamber, their new studio, has begun development on the next BioShock and will be developing it for several years. So it looks like it's going to be a while before we see the new BioShock game.
Like, we talk about Splinter Cell, and now we talk about BioShock, and these are just game franchises that people have been dying for years. Just begging to pay money to these developers and publishers, right?
Man,
and expecting that they've been in development. So why does it take so long for them to even get around to starting development on something like this?
So Splinter Cell, we don't know anything about, right? But I remember when they when Take-Two first said something about BioShock a few months ago, Jason Schreier like came alive and was like, "Well, wait a minute," and apparently he let everyone know that it had been being worked on already, right?
True.
And maybe there was some kind of...
maybe they scrapped something.
Right, they scrapped all or parts of it or something, and it's still going on now. But at least it seemed like, you know, they've been aware that the world wants BioShock, and they've been trying to make a new game and just having whatever struggles they are, for at least for a few years or so. But
it's like, how do you make a BioShock without Ken Levine? You know, because after Irrational shut down...
he's like taken the skeleton of Irrational and turned it into Ghost House, I think.
Ghost Story games.
Ghost Story games. And, so obviously the way that things kind of ended with him and BioShock Infinite, I'm sure they would have loved for him to create BioShock 4, but nonetheless, we shouldn't be having to wait this fucking long for games that people clearly want to buy and would clearly work in, the modern scope of what we're playing.
Yeah. The next story here is just a fun little tweet that got sent out that I thought added some possibility to what we could see at E3 or the next Xbox event. So Drew Murray, who's the design director at The Initiative, which is Microsoft's new quadruple A studio, he posted a photo with the following. We were fortunate enough to have Phil Spencer visit The Initiative yesterday to tour the new studio, talk about where Xbox is headed, and most importantly, get his hands on the sticks and experience the game in action. And accompanying this was a photo of him and Phil standing next to each other playing a game, but you couldn't see the screen. The reason I thought this was interesting is because that game in some manner is playable, right? Whether it's a vertical slice, whether it's a small section of the game. That gets me excited because I do think this leads credence to the fact that at the very least we'll see a teaser for the Initiative's game this year. It could still obviously be years away, but I do think it's cool that it's in a playable state, which means that I think they had Phil there to give him the confidence to want to show something early, because Xbox has kind of moved away from showing a game 2 or 3 years out since the whole Scalebound debacle and all of that, right? So I do think that this leads credence to the fact that we could see the Initiative's game, which is kind of exciting. Not any news there really, but yeah, a neat little picture.
It's pretty. That's pretty cool. Like, it sounds so positive. If you remember back to when we got the big story about Visceral and how painful their development was on that Star Wars game,
R.I.P.
And I remember one part of it was them explaining how the EA executives would visit every few months or every 6 months or whatever the time frame was to basically like check in, like check their progress and like, what do you have to show for us? And this might have been Anthem I'm talking about now that I think about it. Either way, basically the EA, the publisher,
nonetheless, EA,
yeah, the publisher would keep checking in periodically at big dates, and like they would have to show like, oh shit, like what do we have? They'd have to have a demo put together, a vertical slice, whatever it was, to show like what they've been doing and what they have. And it sounded so intimidating, and like they were always like backs against the wall trying to get something ready to show for those checkpoints. And whereas what you just described from Phil doing sounds just so much more friendly, and like the developers are posting a picture with him and like, yeah, Phil came by and check it all out and it's all cool and he's into it, or it just seems like a better situation.
He said we couldn't wait for him to get his hands on the sticks. Like, jeez, man, you're excited. You're excited.
Well, a bit corny maybe, but cool.
He's been on a tour. He was in Japan, and then he recently posted pictures with Double Fine and with the initiative. So he's going around to all of these studios, probably just get a feel of the game so he doesn't seem like he's talking out of his ass at E3. You know what I mean? Because Phil is the type of guy who actually plays video games pretty consistently, and I think he's the type of guy that wants to know what he's talking about and not just get a script at the last moment at E3 of like, okay, we're talking about this third-person shooter. Okay, got it. You know what I mean? He wants to actually have a feel for the game he's talking about. So I think that's pretty cool.
Can you guys imagine Sony having anyone in the next generation that rivals Phil Spencer as far as just the connection with the community? Now, I know that Shuhei Yoshida has been like that in the past, but his role has clearly changed, and he also wasn't as high up as Phil Spencer. So
hopefully Herman,
someone on his level. What's that?
Hopefully Herman, whatever his last name is.
Herman Holst.
Herman could do it. Yeah,
we'll see.
He is definitely someone that I feel like is a candidate for that. But for someone on Phil's level, which is even higher than Herman, to be as well loved and well respected as he is in not only the Xbox community but just video game community as a whole, is wild, man.
I think if Sean Layden was still there, I'd put my bets at like 85-90. With Jim Ryan now running the show, despite Herman Hulse being there, and I think it is possible, I just think that guy's his perspective on it is way more business suit tied up, kind of, not so much free flowing.
Yeah, but I even felt that way about Sean Layden. Like, I feel like the reason people love Phil Spencer is because they think they could see themselves having a beer with him, whereas like Sean Layden looks like the type of dude that would recommend you new types of wine.
Yeah,
I mean, Phil literally wears jeans and t-shirts when you see him, and Sean Layden wore suits. Nice suits though, but still.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't saying specifically Sean Layden being that guy. I just felt that his leadership would lend itself to somebody like that emerging Jordan. Whereas with Jim Ryan, I don't know if he's the type of guy that's going to greenlight a personality to become that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Like, Sean, I'm working on some charcuterie over here. Could you help me out with a nice cheese?
Yeah.
To pair with this Bordeaux.
It's funny you brought up PlayStation though. So we have a roundup of some Sony PlayStation 5 news. Not all of it positive. Actually, I don't think any of it's positive now that I'm looking at it. So first up, Sony recently updated its website with an official PS5 section. It stated they're not quite ready to unveil the next generation of PlayStation. Further, it also allowed signups to receive updates regarding the console moving forward. I think, are you guys in agreement with me that this is them saying, hey, there's no February event, right? We're not going to have a February event.
We're not ready to reveal the console yet, except for those magazine articles that we put out
Wired
twice now.
Yeah. I think this is just them getting ahead of the PR they'd have to make up for, right? Of people towards the end of the month being like, where was the event we were expecting in February? They're like, yo, we're not doing it anytime soon. Don't think it's happening. Yeah, it's the sign up for the website too went away after a couple of hours. So I don't know if they limited it or it maybe got crashed because so many people were trying to go to sign up. Who knows? But
do you guys feel like this has become more of a thing recently of companies within the video game realm coming forth and getting out ahead of this stuff? Like, hey, just so your expectations are on point, don't get too excited. This is not like a console reveal event. This is this is just a regular state of play, right? They'll say stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's reactionary to the state of play stuff, to the Nintendo Direct stuff, which is like never ending of a new rumor. There's a Direct this week, right? I think it's smart to be like, yo, settle your expectations. It's not happening anytime soon. It's kind of like a non-confirmation confirmation, right? Of they're not saying there's not an event in February, but the fact they're saying we're not revealing it anytime soon is like, yo, dude, it's not happening in February.
Well, and they're just, it's just the opposite of how you would expect them to act. You know, they would never do that before now, and all of a sudden it's just like, hey, by the way, just so you know. It's very strange.
Yeah. The next story here, this one is, I put it in this bucket because PSVR is going to be an important thing moving forward with the PlayStation 5, but Sony Interactive Entertainment announced the closing of Manchester Studio, who was a developer they created in 2015 to work specifically on PSVR titles. Sony stated that the studio was folded because, quote, as part of our efforts to improve efficiency and operational effectiveness, unquote. And its unannounced project wasn't revealed because they were currently working on a project. I wanted to know from you guys, does this worry you about PSVR, that Sony's closing one of their own studios that was focused on making titles for it? Or do you think that it means that they're shifting away more towards the third-party partnerships because with them they don't feel the value in, making them in-house because it hasn't taken off the way they might have expected? Like, what do you guys think?
I don't think it's worrying me. I will say that this is unfortunately a little bit common with Sony on the VR front. They have done this in the past with other studios. Like what did they do with Guerrilla? Like they turned the Cambridge studio into a Guerrilla satellite, even though it had already previously existed, and they were making Rigs, right? The VR title. So, and then they ended up shutting them down after Rigs was released. So, and I think this might have even happened with one other studio, possibly also in the UK. I definitely feel like that was a thing. Maybe not VR related, but nonetheless. And of course, Drive Club, which did do Drive Club VR. The studio was also in the UK, but different than the one I was referencing earlier. Jerrad, do you know who made Drive Club?
Not a clue.
Not a clue. Anyways, they made Drive Club VR. Drive Club was its own set of issues that shut that studio down, but nonetheless, this is
Evolution Studios?
Weird line. Thank you, Jerrad. Which then went on to go be like a team at now I'm forgetting the other studio name, but they had more problems there nonetheless.
Man,
they're walking this line on how to have their first party studios that do their big AAA games, and how to also have first party internal studios that are either heavily focused on VR or heavily versed in VR, or are just solely doing VR. That's what this studio was that just got closed down. Also worth noting, they just picked up Insomniac, who has a lot of experience with VR, so we'll see how it all balances out between them and their VR studios.
Yeah. Dom, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think Jim Ryan rolled in for his biannual checkpoint into the studio, and they were just all playing ping pong and had nothing to show him, so he dropped the hammer on him.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oh god.
I think with them having just bought Insomniac, you assume that they're working on VR stuff from a first party perspective. So I don't think it's quite worrying. It's certainly not a good sign for their VR games, but they have said that PSVR is going to work on PS5, and they are making a PSVR 2. I think they confirmed that. To me that says more, about. It means something to them, and they're going to keep investing in it, at least for now. But we'll see.
Yeah. Are you a PSVR guy, Andrew?
I had a PSVR and then my cat destroyed it.
Oh,
Whoa.
awful.
Yeah, but it was cool. I mean, there's better VR rigs out there.
Yeah. And lastly, according to Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki, the PS5's price hasn't been decided. He stated on the matter, quote, "We are competing in the space, so right now it's hard to discuss anything about the price at this point," unquote. Now, people think that this is, since he put in there competing in the space and they haven't decided on price, that they're waiting for Xbox to show their cards. The problem with that is we can probably assume that Xbox is going to reveal the price at E3, right? So if Sony reveals the console without a price, or their reveals after E3, right? Do you think announcing a price like in July is too late with the product coming out in August or November?
This fall.
Yeah.
August or November?
I mean, I think it's definitely, if it does come out this year, it's definitely coming out in November and no earlier than that. So,
yeah.
I mean,
then waiting on a price though, what are your guys' opinions on that? Do you think it's a smart move?
I think they're trying to gauge to see how much Xbox wants to charge for their console, but I mean, at this point, it's just another expensive PC pretty much. So it's probably gonna be like $500 or $600, and I'm sure Xbox will be the same.
Yeah, my opinion on it is more pessimistic than optimistic. So a lot of optimists see this as, oh, they're waiting for Xbox to announce a $500 price point so they can go $400. I don't think that way. I think that they're waiting so that way they make sure they don't charge too much. They're like, oh, Xbox is charging $500, we could charge $500 too. You know what I mean? I think it's more of that of I don't think they're waiting for the price to undercut them. I think they're waiting for the price so they know how high they can make the price, because I do think we're going to see this console generation. They're not trying to undercut each other because these are such powerful machines that they don't want to lose out on money. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they're willing to, what can we put it at? Yeah.
It's a scale, right? Both of what you just said is true, right? Because maybe they're willing, they have it budgeted out where they could go as low as 300. But if Xbox goes 500, then they're like, well, shit, we'll go 400 because we can, like you're saying.
There's no way it's budgeted at 300, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That math is wonky, but the idea remains there. But then the inverse is also true. Whereas if Xbox is 400, or, Xbox is 300, then they know they can't go higher than that. So it goes both ways for sure. Among other factors, the headlines around you can definitely get the implication of what he said, but he also said there's a lot going on in this space, and I don't think that's the only thing. There's certainly floors and ceilings and other things that are going to affect what they do, and of course the competition is one of them.
Well, tariffs and all that stuff too on top of that, right? And then the coronavirus affecting manufacturing and stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. To this point too is that the PlayStation 4 was cheaper than the Xbox One by $100, but that escalation in price for the Xbox One was partially the Kinect, right? The Kinect being boxed in and included. So if they shipped it without a Kinect at launch, it probably would have been around the same price. My assumption would be that, but do we all believe that they're waiting on a price to match it, or are any of you confident enough that they do want to undercut them if possible?
Oh, yeah, they'll undercut if they can for sure. Just a matter of how much.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah,
because it worked so well last time, right?
Yeah, but my concern is I don't know if they could afford to undercut this generation because of how powerful the machines are, right? Here's the thing. If a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox are the same price, that's still a plus for PlayStation, right? In a way. The only way it hurts PlayStation is if they're more expensive, in my eyes, right? If PlayStation is more expensive than the Xbox, that's an issue. But if they're the same price, I think that's perfectly fine for PlayStation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It depends on what that floor is.
Digital games have gotten. As big as digital games have gotten, I definitely think that people are going to want to stick with, the console that they were on this generation if they're just going to do one.
Yeah, well, and especially with PlayStation 5 now being backwards compatible with at least the PS4, right? So,
man.
Yeah.
And,
right.
I don't know why I didn't realize it sooner, too. obviously the digital games you've bought, it's backwards compatible now, so you get those like pushing you to stay in your ecosystem. But even for like the amount of people that still bought physical games, a long time ago, both these companies thought, oh well, duh, we'll just start giving these fuckers away free games that are digital, right? With PS Plus and Xbox Live Gold. They probably don't call us fuckers, but they just started giving us free digital games, right? So now, even if you weren't someone who bought a bunch of digital games before, if you're a subscriber, then yeah, all of a sudden you got this library that is going to carry over to the new system, even if, you know what I mean? So like, even those reluctant to go digital, they found a way to get you in. So I think Jordan's right. Like that plays a big role here in how they price this probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys want to hop into what we've been playing?
Sure.
Cool. So I'll start. Before we started the podcast, Andrew and I were talking about Season 4 Assimilation for Apex Legends. I've only played a couple of hours.
Assimilation.
Tried out the new sniper. Andrew and I were also talking about, like, I'm not a huge sniper guy in Apex Legends, so my opinions on it aren't really relevant because, you know, it's just not my weapon of choice. Used Revenant a couple of times. I really like his toolkit. His whole, like, lore and backstory and everything is super dope. He's, in my opinion, like the first true villainous character in Apex Legends. A lot of them are like bad guys, but they're like comically like, oh yeah, I'm a bad guy, you know.
I'm a bad
I guess
guy.
Caustic would be the most like scary because of you see his backstory of like, you know, poisoning people to death and stuff, but he wasn't really like terrifying, whereas like Revenant is terrifying. Like he's scary. I just like his design. I liked how he was introduced. We had talked about it, how Forge was introduced, and then he was killed off. So having fun with that. I love that you can earn the in-game currency to just buy the next battle pass. So I didn't even have to spend any money because I went ham with Season 3. So with Season 4, I just logged in.
Can you do that with Fortnite?
Yeah, but from my experience, the currency in Fortnite is harder to acquire, but also I'm not somebody who plays a ton of Fortnite, so I may be misspeaking on that. But with Apex, I logged in. I had enough currency to buy the Battle Pass and the Legend because new Legends cost in-game currency as well. Yeah, so it's super simple to do that if you put enough time into the game. Otherwise, I think the Battle Pass is $10. Well, like $9, I think, technically. It's like $8.99 or something for enough Apex coins to buy it. Yeah, enjoying that. The
Apex coins.
The game I've been playing the most, though, this week is Outer Worlds. So this was a game I was super excited about at launch, and then something else came out, and I had to jump ship. I don't maybe Fallen Order is the game that came out. But yeah, I had to jump ship from it and stop playing. But Outer Worlds, I decided to jump back in. Now that jump back in the ship. Now that I had recently finished Guacamelee 2, been playing it a bunch. It's like I'm head over heels in love with this game. Not because it does anything innovative, as has previously been stated, but it's just like more of that Fallout goodness, right? Without a lot of the issues. It actually, through my entire time playing, I've only experienced one bug, and it was an enemy falling through the ground, which like didn't really affect me negatively. It's like, okay, he's dead now. The characters are really good. The companions, for the most part, are really cool. I think 5 of the 6 are well written. I think one of them is annoying for the sake of being annoying, and in that sense, I do think it's well written. His name's Felix. He's meant to be like the whiny, annoying character of the bunch. Their companion quests aren't to the level of Mass Effect 2. I mean, that's like God tier in terms of video game companion quests. But they are solid enough to get you interested in the characters' backstories. The worlds are varied enough. I do wish, and this is a part of the budget, I do wish that some of them were more expansive. Like, I understand having small to mid-sized worlds because they're not trying to be Fallout, they're trying to be something in between that's a little bit more approachable and accessible. But I do wish for the awe factor to have that like one location that's like, oh, this is the place, you know? And maybe that's towards endgame, that they could do that in the sequel because we know that there's probably going to be a sequel. The one thing I will say is I don't find myself, and this is a product of me playing RPGs, I don't know if you guys are the same way, I get to a point where I scoop up all of these tonics and potions and things that I think I'll eventually use, and then by the time I'm done with the game, I just never use them. And it's just like, I never find them useful. With this game, I found that you can easily, if you grind enough, you can build your armor and guns up to the point where you're just wrecking shop. Like, things aren't difficult at all. You're just destroying. There's the whole good and bad reputation system in this game, obviously, but one of the neatest things that they did is, I was talking to this girl in this mission, and I had to get research from her, research notes. Now,
Oh, yeah, you were.
talking through the conversation, God, I decided, in the conversation, I decided to not take the research notes from her and let her use them, but I didn't actually want to do that, but there was no way of going back. So instead of reloading a save, what I did is I killed her and then took the notes off of her body, and so the way it worked is in the conversation, the quest marked out the X of me helping the guy instead of the girl, right? But then once I killed her and took the notes, it removed the X and put a check mark. So I think that's pretty cool. I didn't have to go and reload a save. I just had to do something a little bit, immoral to fix my mistake, but I could do that, and it was in the game systems. I thought that was really neat. Enemy variety.
Fucked up, Jerrad.
And I don't know if you had this problem, Dom, because I knew you finished the game. Enemy variety is a little lackluster. There's not a whole lot of different types of enemies. It's pretty much like the gorilla type things, the dog type things, and the scorpion type things. That's pretty much all it is. Various colors and sizes, but it's pretty much all it is.
I was kind of like the gun variety was kind of like and they weren't that cool. I don't know.
Yeah, did you use any of the science weapons? Like the shrink ray and the weird amorphous like thing?
Oh, shrink. Okay, never mind. Nope, I didn't. Never mind. And actually, I take back my criticism because I missed out apparently.
Yes, cool. There's a side quest where you can go and acquire all of these science weapons that do different things. There's actually an achievement, I think, for using like 5 of them on the same enemy, which is like torture. You like shrink it and then you turn it into something else, and then you like awful. What I will say is this game suffers from the indie budget, but I do think that now that they're owned by Microsoft, I think that they're going to get enough budget and backing behind it that the second one will be that sequel that takes it to the next level. I do think this is a really cool, awesome proof of concept that does struggle in some areas, like Dom said, with the gun variety and the enemy variety. But that stuff is more of a byproduct of the budget, right? And that they wanted to get this out, and they were getting published by an indie publisher. I do think that all of that stuff can be fixed with more financial backing and support from a bigger publisher like Microsoft. So, yeah, I'm not done with the game yet. I'm still 23 hours in. I looked up on how long to beat normally, and it's 14 hours normally for people, which is crazy to me because I'm 23 hours in, and I still think I probably have another 10 hours at least.
Yeah, I like that website because it'll show the main story at 14 hours, main story plus some extras,
completions,
25 hours, or completionist 45 hours or whatever. It kind of goes through like the different ways you could do it.
HLTV.
Yeah. Still enjoying that. Hope to beat it this coming week. I want to try to get through this so I can hop into possibly Metro Exodus. It's a shame I haven't played that game yet, despite me loving the first 2 titles. But yeah, it's been my time with Outer Worlds. I really can't wait for the sequel. I think I'll end up liking this game a lot, but I don't know if I'll love it because of the drawbacks of it being a more indie-ish title. But yeah, I'm enjoying my time with it. Who wants to go next? What have you been playing?
Days fucking gone, man.
Sons of Anarchy, Walking Dead.
And I know why they call it Days Gone, because you love playing the game so much that you just lose days to it. Your days are just gone.
Wow.
Because you spent so much time in the damn game.
That's deep.
God.
No, it's cool though. I finished the main story, I guess you could say. I still have like apparently 20 damn hordes to go and kill, and I'm gonna kill all of them because it is great. I've taken down a few already. It was only last week where I said like it didn't seem like it was possible to do that, but you get more powerful towards the end of the game, and like, man, it is great fun fighting giant zombie hordes. They do a great job of giving you the tools so you can set up traps and like look around the environment and try to plan out like, I'm gonna draw them in this way and funnel them through this little tunnel, and then I can just like start pegging them. But then too, as you approach them, what they do that great thing with the music, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just like low beats of just like it's almost like a Jaws thing, but cooler.
Yeah.
And then when
sounds of impending doom.
Yeah, and the environments are super. It's Oregon, right? So the environments are super varied, verticality wise. I don't know. There's a lot of mountains and hills, and valleys. So a lot of times you'll see the giant horde, and it's just like it's damn scary. And then when they start coming at you, you're like, oh shit! Like you can really feel like damn, like that's 1,000 damn zombies all running right at me.
So is it the gameplay that has you hooked and not necessarily the narrative?
It's both. The narrative was really good too. I mentioned last week also, like, it's another zombie game, so like it retreads a lot of the typical zombie themes and tropes, but it still does some new stuff to keep it cool, and it knows what you know about zombie stuff. You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's not boring in that sense. We're like, oh, here we go with this again. It doesn't stay on that stuff. But the characters are super interesting too, for the most part. I will say, like, and then like the gameplay is super super good. Like I can't praise that enough. Just riding around the world on your bike is fantastic. And then I mentioned some of the combat. It's actually fighting human enemies is actually kind of like the worst part of the combat. Like fighting zombies and hordes is way cooler. But the one gripe, I guess, is and this is especially compared to, and probably unfairly compared to, all the other Sony first-party games, the cohesiveness, I guess, of like the cutscenes with the gameplay is like a little less polished than like a Last of Us and Uncharted,
it's like jarring,
God of War. And granted, this is a giant open world game, super long game, so it's kind of unfair.
Is it like where characters, like, you get into a cutscene and characters are locking into place, like really stiff?
Yeah, it's not that clunky, but it's more like you're riding your bike and you kind of come up onto the objective like in a GTA, right? But then the screen cuts to black, and then all of a sudden you're 30 yards ahead of where you had just started, and then the transitions are just a little awkward sometimes.
Okay.
And it's kind of you're kind of nitpicking at this point, but just some of that polish wasn't quite up to like the Sony first party quality level, but it's not horrible, right? It's totally like, sure, it's nothing you think about too much, but
this is the studio's like first major AAA-ish game, right?
Yeah, and man, I can't say it's huge.
In a long time, at least. Yeah,
I think I spent at least like 50 hours in this place, and like it's enormous, and there's still a lot to go. And yeah, man, I don't know, it's great fun, and I have a Death Stranding BB on my motorcycle, so take with that what you will.
I'll tell you this much, Dom. There's a PlayStation sale going on right now, right? And because of you, I hovered over Days Gone for $20. And I was like, do I pull the trigger?
$20?
Dom's been talking about this game so much. And then I looked over to Twitter, and the Metro Exodus account tweeted, and I'm like, I can't buy this game for $20 if I still haven't started Metro Exodus. So, to let you know, though, you sold me on it enough to hover over it, which beforehand I would have never done.
What'd you say, Metro? Oh, okay. Buy Days Gone.
It'll definitely be on sale again. It's been on sale many times already. So
yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it though, because it definitely hit both of those levels of interest for you, right? Of the Sons of Anarchy and The Walking Dead, and sometimes that can be a blessing or a curse depending on if they nail it. And it seems like they nailed it for you, which is super dope.
Man, it's definitely the best Far Cry game I've ever played too.
Huh.
Ooh, that's interesting. That's a spicy take. Jordan or Andrew, either of you want to go next? What you've been playing?
Jordan,
I'll
you
let
can
the
go.
guests go. Okay.
Too nice, each of you.
Well, the reason that I was holding off there for a second is because I'm currently pressing proceed to checkout. And I'm currently pressing confirm purchase for a $21.84 total on.
Oh, nice!
I better get a kickback for that. I get my 10% commission or something.
You sold them on it, yeah. That is totally. I don't want to diminish the game by any means. It seems like a really solid $20 game. At its worst, it's like this is a game you pick up on sale and play, and you don't. I think it coming out at 60, because I'm assuming all of the technical bugs are kind of gone at this point, right, Dom? They've kind of updated it by now.
I've had like 2 glitches The game crashed once.
Like
Which is
typical
wild.
open world stuff, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
the game crashed once, and then one house was like up in the air, and I couldn't get in it.
A house? I haven't
Yeah, it
heard
was
that
a
one before.
cabin.
Like I've heard
It is.
characters. A house. Interesting.
Yeah, a whole house. It was
Yeah.
wild.
What the hell? So you
that
could see through the
game-
bottom of it? Weird.
I couldn't do anything. Yeah, I had
Andrew,
no-
what were you
That's
gonna say?
weird.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that game, from what they've said, is and from what I've seen, is that they've made a lot of huge improvements with that game
That's solid.
from launch. Because
Yeah.
like it had a lot of issues at launch. That people were complaining about like content and like things to do in the game, and it sounds like they've kind of really turned it around with that game. So honestly, I have the game. I bought it at launch. I never finished it, but I've definitely thought about going back to it, and $20 for that game is kind of a steal. Like that's highway robbery, to be honest, for the amount of content that you get with Days Gone. So
And the fact that it's in better
Yeah,
shape
I
now
had
too.
Actually,
Yep.
I had always planned on picking the game up at some point, but I wanted first a sale. I wanted it to be cheaper than $60, and two, I wanted to speak with someone directly who had played it and been like, yeah, it's worth picking up. So both of those things happened. I didn't know it was on sale. Jerrad, you let me know about that, so thanks. And Dom, listening to your soliloquies over the weeks, has told me that this is at least worth checking out, if
Yeah.
nothing else, because it seems like the gameplay is a lot more solid than when they first started out, and waiting this time for it to go down in price has probably given them that time to polish up those glitches that did seem a little bit prevalent when the game first
And
came
then one last thing too, I'll say in the gameplay is when you start the first like I don't know 20 hours, like it's more of a survival game and it's tough. Like you
Yeah.
steer clear
Okay.
of larger groups of zombies and your resources are limited. You don't have great guns, and it feels more like The Last of Us, right? But now that certainly by the point where I'm at, the last third of the game, the gameplay kind of evolves and you become more powerful and you approach things differently. And that's kind of cool. It has good progression.
Yeah.
Like that. Where even though like you earn skills and get new abilities, but those are actually kind of like lame. It's like your headshots give you health back, and your crossbow does more damage, and your health cocktails give you more health. Like the upgrades are kind of like,
Yeah.
they're useful but not like exciting new abilities necessarily.
Sounds like a great $20 game to me.
It is. Yeah.
You're going to be playing Days Gone possibly in the future, Jordan. But what did you do this last week?
Yes, of course. What did I do in the past, Jerrad? Now, something that I decided to learn a little bit more about recently was what is called the Troubles. And that is something that we might know in America is like the Irish Civil War, which is takes place during the late 60s all the way to the late 90s. And it is basically Northern Ireland wanting their independence from Britain and not being part of the United Kingdom, which Ireland itself already had. And a lot of people don't realize that Ireland and Northern Ireland are separate deals, even though at the end of the day it's all Ireland, right? So then it got really ugly, and it's just such an interesting series of events that was really just civilians kind of terrorizing each other with terrorist attacks. So it's very ugly, but it was something that I definitely wanted to know more about because I was not brushed up on that aspect of history. So I watched a couple documentaries, and then I've also watched a really great movie called 71, as in like the year 71. And it's a fictional tale about a British soldier who goes in to help with the riots in Northern Ireland in 71 and ends up just dealing with all kinds of chaos, and it shows you his story. So I really enjoyed that. And then before the podcast, I actually finished off a documentary called No Stone Unturned, which is about a small town outside of Belfast, Ireland, where most of the stuff was happening. And there was a little terrorist attack in this random bar, but the big part about it seems that there was a lot of police collusion and corruption that goes all the way seemingly up to the top in Britain. So it's a very interesting story. Once again, very sad, but also goes more into the bigger conflict of the Troubles. So that one was really good. Also watched a documentary called Bobby Sands, 66 Days, which is about, of course, Bobby Sands, who started the hunger strikes during the Troubles in some of the prisons, where these prisoners were trying to get basically the status of political prisoners, which obviously changes things for them. All that being said, and I watched Spotlight on the Troubles, A Secret History by the BBC, or first couple parts of it so far, which is a documentary series that they did recently. So all that being said, just learning a lot about that specific part of history, and unfortunately how ugly things got with, brothers and sisters, really, neighbors across the street in Belfast and really all over Northern Ireland. So I'll just leave it to that aspect of it, because those were several different things there. But yeah, that's what I've been doing this past week.
Nice. I love when that happens to me too, where you find like a point in history that really interests you, so you just take the deep dive. You're like, I'm learning everything I can.
Certainly where I'm at is the deep dive.
Yeah. Andrew, what have you been playing this last week?
Yeah, so, before the show, Jerrad and I, we talked about Apex a little bit, and Season 4 launched on Tuesday. I've only had a few matches to try that out, but so far I really like the changes they've made. I like the new legend they added and the new weapon that they added as well. I have also gotten back into Overwatch after a super long hiatus from playing that game altogether. I'm playing it again on PC, and I'm having a really good time with it. Before that, I actually had tried out League of Legends again, which is crazy because the last time I played it is when the game actually officially came out. So yeah, it's been a really, really long time. And yeah, what else have I been playing? Nothing really on PS4. I made a goal for myself in 2020 to beat a bunch of games, but I honestly haven't even had any time to do any of that. So I still want to there's still a bunch of games coming out soon that I really want to try out. I'm definitely gonna probably take a day off, play Doom Eternal when that drops.
Oh, man, I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for that game. Same with Resident Evil 3. I'll probably take a day off to play that too. Trying to think of some other games.
You're saying that I've realized I'm in the weird Venn diagram of people who are buying Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal on the same day, and I'm equally excited for both. It's so funny.
I forgot about Animal Crossing. Yeah, I'll probably pick that up too.
Talk about a palate cleanser.
Yeah, to be honest.
Yeah, counter programming, man.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of other little games that are coming out on the Switch that I definitely want to put some more time into. There's a Mega Man X collection that's coming out in a couple weeks or a week or so. I think actually
for a second I thought you were talking about a game called Omega Man X, and I was like, whoa, that's a cool
Omega
spin-off.
No,
or not a spin-off, but a cool rip-off, dude. That's way cool.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's a Mega Man X remaster. It's the GBA game.
Right.
It's the GBA games that are getting remastered for Switch, or not remastered, but ported for Switch. Yeah. And so I'm probably going to try that out because I've been told that those are really, really good Mega Man X games. Yeah, there's just a ton of stuff that I haven't had a chance to try out and that I've wanted to. I tried picking up Control again, and I did get 3 or 4 more hours into the game. I want to go back. I'm still pretty early on. I don't have any, I have 2 powers. Yeah, I mean, just a lot of Apex and a lot of Overwatch, at least for this week. And the weekend starts tomorrow, so I'm sure I'll put some more time into some stuff this weekend for sure.
I know you're a huge movie buff. Real quick, what was your favorite film of 2019?
Ooh, good question.
What did I
Generic.
put down? I put one film. Oh, 2019. Yeah, 1917. Hands down.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
Hands down. Like, that's one of the best, if not the best movie experience I've ever had, like in a theater.
Hold up. Is it better, or I guess is it better than a better war movie than Saving Private Ryan? Is it that level?
It's different. That's the problem, is that you can't really
Okay.
compare it to that because,
It sounds more like Dunkirk.
yeah, but I think the problem with Dunkirk is that it was marketed really weird because, like, if you've seen that movie, it's like 3 different storylines happening at different times, and they're all moving differently, and then they all connect again at the end, and it's really hard to kind of keep track of what's going on. The movie, like, Dunkirk is beautiful, and it's great, but this movie blows that movie out of the water.
Whoa.
110%. It's like, it's definitely like creeped in my top 10 movies of like all time. The direction in
It
the movie
sold me on that
yeah,
last shot in the trailer of like
Yeah.
the panning out, the panning backward shot. Ugh.
Yeah, and like that's incredibly well done. Like it doesn't even like really. It's about the characters, and I think honestly, I know like the whole gimmick of having like a one shot like take and all that is like kind of overrated, and it's been done a lot over the last few years. But like, I think in terms of the way that it's done with this movie, I think it's more emotionally attached to the characters because it's done like that, where it's like you're literally not, the camera is not being taken off of those characters for the whole 2-hour runtime of the film.
And I gotta watch this thing.
Yeah, so like honestly, like the direction, the cinematography in and of itself is mind-blowing. Sound design is amazing. It like I don't normally like toot like a movie's horn more than I really should, but like I've literally when I first saw it, I like couldn't stop talking about it with people, and like I was like, you need to see this movie in theater, or else you're really doing yourself a disservice. And like in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I haven't been like, you have to go see this movie. I like, not even an Avengers movie I've been like, oh, you have to go see that movie, because it's like, you're gonna see it if you want to see it. Like, it's an Avengers movie. It is what you probably already think it is. So this is like, okay, war movies and all that have been done to death. Like, you've seen so many war movies.
It's a good pun.
But yeah. But like, to see it done this way and to see it done so well and the way it's executed, like the emotional impact of what you're watching and the way that the characters are interacting with each other and the relationship that they have, and like kind of their backstory that you don't really know about. And then like there's like, probably in the last minute of the movie is one of the best shots I've ever seen, like in cinema. And I've posted a GIF of it before, but I don't want to talk about it, because if you guys haven't seen it, then you'll obviously probably know what I'm talking about. But
Respect.
there's like the last 30 seconds of the movie is like incredibly emotional, and it's just like 2 hours I just spent with these characters. It's over. There's gonna be no sequel. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like there's a lot of investment, and you're brought into it really quickly, and you're just really invested in what's going on. And I think that in and of itself is like not done very well in movies these days, because movies these days is all about franchises. It's all about sequels and, you know, making as much money as you possibly can. And I feel like filmmaking, and I don't want to be like one of those guys that's like, oh, you know, filmmaking is dead, because it's really not. But like, this is just really special. And I think for listeners, I think for you guys, if you have the chance to go see this movie in a theater, like, by all means, please, like, go on an early Saturday morning. It's probably not going to be in theaters for much longer, because it technically came out December 25th in like select cities, but it was like January 17th, I think it like went wide release. So like, if you have like some time, like, by all means, like, go see this movie. Like, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. So
Shit.
That's been it for.
Glad Jerrad asked you about
That's been it for episode 177 of the Controlled Interest Gamecast. Andrew, thank you for joining us. If you can, please let the people know where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you definitely can do that. My Twitter handle is Papa Drew Bear. It's spelled how it sounds, all one word. I do a podcast with Alex Van Aken over at OK Beast. It's called the Jump Master Podcast. You can find that on Spotify, iTunes, I think pretty much everything. It's an Apex Legends podcast. I am working on bringing back my comic book podcast that I used to do with John Bernardo, my co-host. So hopefully that'll be finished here soonish. And then Raccoon City Radio, which is a Resident Evil podcast that I do with Alex O'Neill over at Irrational Passions. That's coming back probably towards the end of March, just right before the release of Resident Evil 3 Remake. And you can find that and Panel to Panel both on iTunes and Spotify and like all of that. So, yeah. That's all I have to plug.
Thank you for joining us again. We want to have you back later in the year. This will likely be the last episode you'll be on with Jordan, I'd assume, because obviously Jordan's leaving with episode 180, but maybe you both will be back at some point where we had two guests. I don't know. I'm not ruling it out, but more than likely.
Maybe Jordan will be killed at the hands of Andrew.
No.
My goodness. That's a long drive from Minnesota to Nashville.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if it's worth it.
When you want someone dead.
If you can, please head over to YouTube, search Controlled Interest will pop up. Hit the subscribe button. The bell notification will let you know when we upload new videos, because you can never trust YouTube's subscription boxes. If you go over iTunes and follow us there as well, leave us a review. Hopefully 5 stars. It helps us out. Twitter, you can find us collectively at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interest abbreviated. We tweet out the newest uploads and a bunch of video game related content. You can find me personally at Jerrad _. You can follow Dom at Dom's Oreos. You can follow Jordan at Malamotus. And like he said, you can follow Andrew at Papa Drew Bear. We'll catch you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye.